Okay, hi everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Jazz at Lincoln Center's virtual panel, Oye Mi Ritmo, celebrating Latin jazz. This panel will be moderated by Nicole Morales, who I'll turn things over to in a second. My name is Chloe. I'm on the video team here at Jazz at Lincoln Center, and I'll be your technical host for the evening. This is just an hour-long panel discussion. There will be no open Q&A for audience members, but feel free to use that chat function in Facebook. Tell us where you're watching from. Any comments you have, we'll be monitoring that as always. And we also ask that if you enjoyed today's programming, that you consider making a donation to Jazz at Lincoln Center. That's at jazz.org/donate, if that's within your means. We really appreciate you being here with us tonight. And with that being said, I'll turn things over to Miss Nicole Morales. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Chloe. Welcome everyone to this panel discussion, Oye Mi Ritmo, as we celebrate Latinx Heritage Month. Tonight, we're joined by an all-star lineup of panelists who will join me in discussing the roots of Latin jazz in Cuba. Without further ado, I'll introduce our panelists. First up, we have Carlos Enriquez, who you might know from the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra. He's the Grammy-nominated bassist. He's been at the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra since he was just 19 years old and has toured the world and shared stages with Chucho Valdés, Tito Puente, and countless others. Next, we have saxophonist, clarinetist, composer, and living legend Paquito De Rivera. The 14-time Grammy Award winner is celebrated for both his artistry in Latin jazz and his achievements as a classical composer. He is also a recipient of the NEA Jazz Masters Award as well as the National Medal of the Arts. Next, we have Daymé Arocena, who is one of the founding members of a together cultural hybrid of Cuba into her work. Elio Villafranca is a celebrated Grammy-nominated pianist who has recorded and performed internationally with Wynton Marsalis, Chick Corea, Eric Alexander, and countless others. He's a faculty member of Temple University, the Juilliard School of Music, and Manhattan School of Music in New York. Thanks everyone for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicole, for having us.
So I just want to get into discussion. So all the panelists here, except for Carlos, but he can also speak to it being Caribeño, but everyone here is Cuban. So I want to focus a little bit about the origins of Latin jazz and the way that Afro-Cuban music has permeated through that. So in jazz, I always think like there's a culture exchange, and with the beginnings of Latin jazz in Cuba, there are different themes that present themselves, like West African rhythms, Yoruba, spirituality, and the cross-pollination between Cuba and the US. In what ways does the diaspora influence the music that you make? And I'll give it to anyone who wants to start and kick that off.
All right, don't go all at once, guys.
I don't know, maybe, I don't know, Paquito, maybe you want to start?
Well, he's got to unmute.
Oh, yeah, let's see.
There you go.
Jazz and Cuban music have what you call Cuban roots. I mean, I'm sorry, common roots. So it's the mixture of African rhythms with the European melodies and harmonies. It's a combination of all that, and the cross-pollination between the two countries, to call it some way, have been happening from the beginning. People like Jerry Roll Morton, since the very beginning, he started talking about what he called he said the Spanish tinge in American music. I remember a few years ago, I was watching un patinaje sobre hielo, ¿cómo se dice eso?
Ice rink?
Skating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a skating rink.
Like there will be this couple of dancers on the ice, and they were playing a music that sounded familiar to me, but I didn't recognize it. And he said, what is that, man? Sounds like a danzón, but it's not really a danzón. It's something similar. I wonder what it is. At the end of the skating competition, that duet that was doing the figuring there, it said piano music by Jelly Roll Morton. That he was one of the first people that noticed that the Cuban music have been having a great impact, not only in jazz, in every type of music in the United States, in theaters, in opera, in popular music. That's been a very strong influence, and all the way around too. Many of the things that for us are like national stuff, national pasatiempo, ¿cómo se dice eso? National activity.
Like pastime.
For example, our national sport is baseball. Nosotros le llamamos el juego de pelota. And that is that's a national sport. And another thing that I a few years ago find out, you know why Benny Moré is called, they call him Benny? Well, the real name of Benny Moré was Bartolo.
Bartolo.
Bartolo used to work all the time in Mexico with the Pérez Prado Orchestra.
That's right.
And the Mexicans told Bartolito, you better change that name because in Mexico, un Bartolo es un burro.
That's right.
El donkey, yeah. And if you know el cantante del burro.
El burro.
And then he chose the name of Benny because Benny was crazy about the Benny Goodman Orchestra.
Mira eso.
Yeah.
And that's why also the big band became part of our culture. A big band. We didn't say big band. We said a big band. A big band. It's part of our culture. En todos los cabarets había un big band. Now things have changed, to smaller group for economic reasons and all that. But the big band was part of our culture. Hubieron en Cuba miles de big band, los hermanos Castro, los buenos. Los hermanos Castro, la Riverside, la orquesta de Riviera, la orquesta de Hilton. So it has been a cross-pollination between the two countries forever, from the very beginning.
Yeah, and I want to expand actually a little bit on the Jelly Roll because I think that's a very important thing. I also find out very interesting that what Paquito was referring to, the Spanish tinge, what he called it. Basically, he was introduced to the Habanera by the Spanish composer. I think that's why he called it the Spanish tinge, because I think at the time the Cuban nationality wasn't really 100% fully formed. Was pretty much either you were a colony either you were a French colony or you were a Spanish colony.
Spanish colony, yeah.
So basically, there was this Spanish composer. I think his name was Sebastián Iradier, who
La Paloma
composed La Paloma, and then he heard La Paloma from him. But Iradier spent time in Havana, and then he learned all this, what they call Habanera, which was basically a danzón style from Havana at the time. And then they call it Habanera because it came directly from Havana. And then he learned that particular piece, and he loved that piece. And then he used the syncopated bass pattern of the and then that exactly as it was, and then he added the blues on top of it, and that's what created his famous Spanish tinge. But I think he should have called it Caribbean tinge because it's basically at the time, New Orleans and Louisiana and Cuba and Haiti, there was a big part of everything because there was a lot of circulation. When after the Haitian Revolution, when all the enslaved people got free, then they went to Cuba and then they went to Louisiana to looking for work and things. And it's at the same time where all this very steam formation of jazz was happening. And about the big bands, the earliest big band in Cuba had like two phases. One was the first phase of the big band started like as early as 1914. And And I find out like about a big band, a couple of big bands that that was happening in Cuba, that was created in Cuba. The first one that I found that was in 1914 was in Sagua La Grande, and it's called the Big Band de Sagua, by this pianist who I think he had a really interesting name. I think maybe he was Cuban born, but his family was probably from a different region. And then those early forms of big band had like a very interesting instrumentation, because they have the cornet, and they have the trumpet, they have trombones, they have violins, they have all of this, and then they have a widow.
Como la canzonera. Esas son las canzoneras.
That's right.
También.
Yeah. And you know who had a big band? Moisés Simón. And Moisés Simón had a, which is the creator of the famous piece El Manicero, Peanut Vendor. He had a big band that he had a steady gig in a hotel in Havana for years with his big band, which I think
Alberto Socorá.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that is actually, and those bands they will play both. They will play jazz repertoire, and then also they will play Cuban repertoire. And then they will mix the two of them. I mean, I think that's basically the beginning of that mix of styles, And then the second generation is the one that Hermano Socarrás, because those second generation, like the Leguana Cuban Boy, right? And also, the Orquesta Casino, or also there is a really wonderful recording. It's called. Right, there's a compilation of recordings called Cuban Big Band from between 1940s and 1942, and then they play a piece called Los Bomberos. I don't know if you heard that before, but it's just like a vamp. It's just like very interesting, and it's just like a big descarga basically, and you can tell like they're using the Cuban rhythm, but they're trying to play more like in a jazz style of things, and it was very interesting. So I think that's a little bit of the history of how everything was cooking. And many books actually talks about the formation of Latin jazz starting in this country in 1947 with the Machito. And sometimes I feel like I don't know about is that accurate in a sense, like yes, that happened here in New York, but before that, like what I was mentioning before, like since 1914, already musicians were experimenting with this idea in Cuba, and even that recording that I mentioned, Los Bomberos, was even 1940s, between 1940 and 1942, way before Machito and his Afro-Cuban were formed here. Before the event that everybody quoted as the beginning of Latin jazz in New York City.
Yeah, that's deep, Elio, because everything you're saying is everything I actually wanted to say. I'm just going to add to it. Sometimes we got to think about, when we use the word Latin jazz, we could think about it philosophically, right? And we could also think about it actually, like an actual form. Like what Elio was saying. Yeah, people start talking about Latin jazz, and Afro-Cuban Latin jazz starting in New York with Machito and the orchestra. And, there is some type of truth to it, but if we talk about the philosophical understanding of how people got together in the early 1900s, I mean, we don't, the word Latin it incorporates not only Cubans, you have, South America, you got the Mexicans, you got Caribbeans, like Elio was saying. It was a big melting pot. And the only thing I want to just touch base on is that in Cuba, in New Orleans, let's just say this, in New Orleans, there were many different cultures that were being met together, right? And also skin color played a very huge factor in people playing with these types of early jazz orchestras. And I was reading a book about early jazz and about people being mistaken as a Creole when they were really either Cuban, Haitian, French, or Puerto Rican, and it comes back to that thought that this music is unbelievable. American jazz is an unbelievable style of music because as a democracy, it brings everything together, and it basically welcomes you with open doors. As a New Yorican, I was able to see this in a very non-biased way. I was able to understand and see, wow, this music is from Cuba. You know, wow, this music is from Puerto Rico, this music is from Santo Domingo, blah blah blah, and you continue, and you know, and I would always try to put things together. There's something that I always like to talk about briefly. You know, in the early, and I don't want to sound scholarly because that's not what I do. I just, the way I've learned, you know, talking to musicians, Bobby Sanabria, Eddie Palmieri, and all these cats. In the early 1900s, there was and Elio might know this. There was an expo in New Orleans where they had all these different military bands come in, and there was this huge Mexican band from the 19th Cavalry of Mexico come in with a huge concert band. There were about 60 or 70 musicians, and this was kind of like the first time that New Orleans gets to see a real different style of playing, you know, and a lot of people, a lot of Mexicans musicians stayed in New Orleans and taught the New Orleans people that we love today, that we idolize as jazz musicians, like Cindy Bechet, you know, Jerry Bogart, and we tend to sometimes forget about that. Another thing that I want to talk about is we had what is it during the World War One, before World War One, there's a guy by the name of James Reese Europe who actually was able to incorporate at least 20 Puerto Ricans when Puerto Rico was determined as a statutory citizens, you know, in America, and this was an unbelievable thing for us.
Rafael Hernandez was one of them.
Yeah, but Rafael Hernandez,
Rafael Hernandez was playing trombone there.
he played trombone. El hermano también, his brother.
Oh,
So yeah, his brother played clarinet. And you know, so all of this is unbelievable because, you know, it's I as a young, you know, I'm a young, you know, young student, you know, listening to Paquito and to all these great Tito Puente, Machito, you know, as you start learning this stuff, you start, you know, you start putting the puzzles and all the things together. You know, you start understanding, wow, you know, this gentleman did this, like what Elio was saying about, you know, Benny Moré, you know, Bartologo playing, you know, how Mexico was really loving Cuban music, you know, Pérez Prado going to Mexico and internationalizing the mambo, like Elio talks about it. So it's just an unbelievable topic because there's so many connections, you know, but the one thing we have to realize as, you know, Latinx or Latinos or Latinas, we have to understand is that we, you know, we have given this American of jazz something very valuable, you know, and we should be very proud of it. You know, it's unbelievable the amount of music that we have incorporated in this beautiful form. And it's just, the more we talk today, we're gonna realize how much we're gonna start unraveling so many different details and historical facts that many people don't know. And some people might like it, some people might not like it, but it's the truth, like what Paquito and Elio are saying.
Yeah, and also, you know, that talking about history, you know, the whole thing about, you know, the first female big band that happened in Cuba was Anacaona was also super early. Was like in the 20s, you know, and if you're thinking about forward thinking, you know, at that time having an all female band, it was kind of like, and they all were playing like beautifully, like amazing. So it was something like something that happened within the jazz context. Didn't happen within
Who
the.
played bass? You know who played bass with Anacaona? Graciela was the bass player.
Exactly.
When I think about female jazz bands and I think about Daymé, like Maqueque was like international touring, award winning, like very prestigious, and just a collective of women who, you know, were traveling around the world. Maybe, you know, you can speak to that, especially like the way that it's kind of crossed barriers in ways that maybe like a super group like that hasn't before.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I wanted to mention that I feel that the conversation is taken this way about big bands and all of that, and I'm learning from all of these guys, because at the end of the day, I'm probably the younger in this panel, and it's such a privilege for me to be here. But at the same time, I wanted first to talk about my experience in jazz, because I was born in 1992, so I didn't get like the, you know, the like the knowledge that I have collected is being like through my own journey, just realizing things and saying, hey, but this is similar to this, or this is kind of the music I want to play, but how can I get this information, or where are things coming from? So, because the first thing I want to say is that my generation doesn't have enough information from their own history about jazz, or the connections that we actually have from the big first people, you know, in history. So the first thing I want to say that is I fell in love with bata drumming. That for me is like the beginning of most of what we call authentic Cuban rhythms. Like more of the Cuban genres are coming from these bata drumming stuff. And I was like, but I hear from this chango bata drumming, this let's say, I don't know, either like avantera or even reggaeton stuff, and I'm like, wait, there is a lot of connections that I'm missing, and the information, what is the information about it? So my generation is actually trying to pull back a little bit and study and understand where we are coming from. So in my case, I have to say that what saved me, what gave me the spot to actually say, this is what I want to do, was the big band of my school. Because we had a big band in Amadeo Roldan when I was studying, and they were missing a singer. And they said, Daymé, do you want to sing in the big band? And I said, yeah, but I didn't know what was a big band. And they told me, okay, this is the music you have to learn, like My Funny Valentine or Bye Bye Blackbird. And I was singing all of that music. And I didn't know that was actually jazz. It took me really long to actually realize that I was in a jazz group, because for me, it was just listening and playing and singing stuff from the music sheets. So pretty mild, let's say that. So now I'm like, why we that have this legacy and these roots and all of that, we don't have that information by our side to develop more stuff. So that's something that I really wanted to put in the panel, in the consideration of everybody, because at the end of the day, I really like to speak for my for my generation people too. And about Maqueque and about all women band and female staff and all of that, I had my dream when I graduated in I can't remember which year, whatever. When I graduated, I said, I want to make an all-female jazz group, because I was always the only girl in the band, the only girl in the big band, the only girl in the group. Like, girls weren't involved in the musical jazz life of the country. So I said, why not? Let's try to do something. So I created a band called Alami, that is the base of what you know today as Maqueque. I had a band that we used to do a lot. We used to fight a lot. Nobody gave us chance in Cuba. Everybody was like, girls playing jazz, why you don't try something else? Like we were in this situation that we didn't know where to go, because we didn't find any support, basically. And we tried to get, you know that in Cuba you need authorization from the government to perform. So we tried 3 times and they said no 3 times. Like, all of that, we faced a lot of problems. Then I met Jane Bonnet playing with my band, playing with Alami in Havana. And she asked me if I wanted to join her in her band at that time. That was the Spirit of Havana, with Hilario Duran and all of these guys. And I came here to Toronto and I started performing with her, but kind of the music that she was playing from ages ago, and all the rumba stuff that she had and all of that. And I was telling Jane, would you like to pay attention a little bit to my girls? Because, you know, we are trying to do new and different stuff. So maybe you like it and let's try something. So that's how we created Maqueque. I asked my grandma, give me a name, a fresh name for a band or something like that. And she gave me 5 names, and Jane decided Maqueque is a name that people will understand in the world. So let's keep that one. And we created this band that is actually Alami, joined GC Garcia and Yusa at the very beginning of the band. And then we got a Juno and we were Grammy nominated. And then people in Cuba were like, what? Really? And we were like, dudes, you didn't pay attention to us when we were there. Like, whoa, yeah, because
In Maqueque.
yeah, and sometimes
What is Maqueque? What is that? That's a Hungarian name or what?
yeah, Maqueque is a name that is coming from the Yoruba tradition and means niña, like little girl.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a sweet name because we were all kids. Basically, Jane is like a mother, right? But we were all young girls with a lot of energy, fight, you know. But I'm telling all of this because at the end of the day, I'm pushing a lot for young girls, for people to try and to do it. And it's really hard when you actually don't have the support. We don't have the information. We don't have even the history. We don't have stuff to study. So another thing that I wanted to point here is that I really remember the first time that I saw Wynton Marsalis in Cuba. He brought the band in Havana, and they made a master class, and they were talking to people and explaining us what was jazz, and everybody was like freaking out, like, whoa, because a lot of people were trying to play jazz and they didn't know what actually jazz was. So we were really behind, but we had the spirit, we have the musical vibe, we had the energy to do it. So at the end of the day, I think that still Cuba has been pushing great musicians. We just need better opportunities, and I think they have to do their job and we have to do our job too. Yeah.
Yeah, Daymé, there is something that is very important, Daymé. You have to know where you're coming from in order to know where you're going. And I'm going to
exactly.
I see that you have that interest in learning. There is un compatriota nuestro muy querido que escribió un libro. He wrote a very important book that I am going to recommend to you. Leonardo Acosta is the name of the writer.
Yes. We have a panel.
Cubano Bop. Yeah.
Sí.
100 years of jazz in Cuba. I learned so much from this. I wrote the foreword, the prologue. He asked me to write the prologue for this. This is very important because I didn't know that all these things happened, and Leonardo was one of the greatest of the Cuban writers.
Yeah.
Un especialista en Martí también, ¿sabías eso?
No, but we have a colloquio
Specialist in Martí. Jose Martí.
Oh, wow.
In this case, not too many people are specialists in Martí.
I know.
And then this will be fantastic.
And also, that I want to add something that I meant. You know, like, it's interesting because I was hearing you speaking, and I was like, it just reminded me when I was in Cuba. You know, we were walking exactly the same footstep that you had. You know, I was training Cuba and classical music. Jazz was not allowed. Cuban music even was not allowed. In my school, they have to fight to get, you know, Justo Pelladito and Goy and all these people to teach us Afro-Cuban music because the school was so elite in a way that there was like, we don't want these people because they're not like as educated as we are anyway. But finally, we end up having them and the school because we as a student, we demanded, we need that form of education. So, but I'm saying this because your generation is exactly the same thing what was happening in my generation. And as Paquito was saying, the reason why I got really hungry to understand about my own music, my own history, was because I remember when I was still at the ENA, I was teaching these courses, not at the ISA, I was teaching these courses to foreigners to learn about Cuban music. And then I remember, you know, one of my classes, somebody came and was asking me like, so how do you play? What's the difference between a mambo and a guaracha? How do you play in the piano? And I was like, well, I don't know, but let me find out. And then actually I went out and I started asking professional musicians in Cuba, like musicians, how do you play a mambo? And nobody knew. You know,
True. No, it's true.
that was when I realized, you know, this can be, because I mean, how can I be, I don't want to be in this position of talking about the music of my country and not knowing the specifics on how you play the specific styles of music. And in Cuba, everybody in Cuba plays montuno, play tumbao, and that's great. But in terms of defining what is guaracha tumbao is different from a son tumbao, and what is it, what kind of montuno you play in a cha-cha-cha, because the cha-cha-cha also has montuno, but you don't play a son montuno like the same montuno they play in a song style like you play in cha-cha-cha.
Yeah.
Amen. Yes.
All of these things that, you know, like, you know, and then I realized, you know what, I need to really do this. And that's when you hear me now talking about the American jazz and talking about all this information that I know now is because I'm reading and I'm just finding out, because I want to be, you know, at a position where I could sit, you know, and with Carlos and Paquito and you and everybody else and talk about my music.
Yeah.
In America, I want to also be able to talk about their music too. I'm happy to hear that you're so hungry to get all this information, because that's basically all that's gonna do is just gonna grow. You're gonna grow like.
Yeah, you're gonna be killing. Yeah.
Yeah, but also at the same time, I believe that being a singer, this is another topic. Because in jazz, I have faced from Cuba that a lot of people believe, okay, the singer is the singer and then we are the musicians. And it's a gap in between both. And sometimes
yeah, but that's years. Eso son años. Eso pasa. That's years of that. I know.
It's weird. It's weird. You have actually to prove to people that you are actually a musician. That's funny. And people ask me, like, or they ask you, like, who writes your songs or who writes your arrangements? And you're like, really? Like, yeah.
You write music?
Yeah.
You write your own thing, your own stuff?
Yeah, I have done 3 albums of all compositions of mine. Yeah.
There you go. Wow. Amen. That's beautiful.
It's not common. That is not common. I mean, that's why the separation between the singers and the musician and the drummer. No, that's different thing.
Cut.
Because not too many singers can write. Very few of them. Mentor May is one of them. Of course, Nat King Cole. ¿Cómo se llamaba el viejito que cantaba? El de Kikiriki, cantaba Rudy Calzado.
Rudy Calzado, yeah.
Rudy Calzado, who sing with the Mario Bauza Orchestra.
Yeah.
He used to come to the rehearsals because I played in that band many times with Mario. Come with his own chart. And everybody was, well, people that don't know him was like, who wrote that? I said, he did it. But that is not very common. Not many singers are arrogant enough to think that, no, you have to write for me. People say, no, I don't read music because that's against my creativity. Tendrá que ver los ojos con la creatividad, chico.
No, of course not. Of course not.
No, you are not very, very common. Well, you know it. But you are not the common people of singers. Singers sometimes are very arrogant, you know, and they sing and they're in the front. They have to do everything for them.
Yeah, that's something that we have to find the balance about it. Yeah, and it's sad that, for example, as a singer, I have to face that all the time. And sometimes people are like, those lines are really complicated. Who wrote those lines? And I'm like, or that song has too many changes. Who wrote that music? And I'm like,
Me.
Actually, sometimes I get into, let's say, the stage for sound check, and the sound engineer comes like, who is the musical director of the band? And my band is like, her. Like, why are you asking me? Why do you suppose it's not the singer? So it's nice to hear from you what you actually get from most of the singers. Then it actually makes me think a little bit more. But I have been hosting a radio show in London that is focused in women that writes music, and you'll guys be impressed of this new generation of kids writing music that is like incredible. Girls are hungry. They want to be known, but not just about singing or having beautiful voices. Now girls actually want to write music, want to do arrangements. Now I believe the game is turning kind of differently, and you know what, it makes me happy.
Yeah.
As before we go to the next question, I just want to, this is Chloe. Paquito, we're having some trouble hearing you. If you want to either turn your mic up or come a little bit closer.
Oh, you know what I will do? I will use this, the mic from the camera. I think, can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's better.
Ahora puede cantar.
This is a cheap mic.
Well, so I lost my train of thought. So you guys touched upon a lot of different things that are really interesting. And I want to talk a little bit about, you guys are talking about the scene in Cuba versus here. And I want to talk a little bit about what are some things that someone who has never been to Cuba might not realize about the scene there. And that could be the scene from when you were in Cuba and the scene today, or however you want to interpret that.
Okay.
People see what regularly people see what they want to see. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
They refuse to see what is there, and they don't want to see.
Yeah, you know,
that's a totally
yeah. No, but you know what? It's Paquito knows this. We went to Cuba. When was it? That was 2010. When did we go with Wynton? El 2010.
Oh, yeah.
2010,
Yeah, I mean, I was still in school. I was still dressing in school. Yeah, school clothes. Yeah.
You know, and it was interesting because, you know, it was many of us. First of all, we were scared, and scared in the sense because we didn't know if we were going to affect many political minds at the time, because we were trying to go for a musical interchange, an exchange. But at the same time, we also knew that we were playing with, there was a certain line of political meaning and activists that you had to deal with. But when we went there, and this is to start this question, and I'm not from Cuba, but like Paquito said, when you go there, you see what you want to see, and unfortunately they present to you, it's almost like smoke and mirrors. They present to you, look, this is how, things usually become much easier in our eyes, because they don't want, I don't know, they don't want us to see what really is going on or whatever. But what Paquito said is true. You go there, and the first thing you want to see, like when I went there, the first thing I wanted to see is, I wanted to see the musicians, right? I wanted to go to Guillermo Tomás, in Guanabacoa. I went to La Ena. I went to Amadeo Rodin, and I just wanted to sit down with the musicians, because only thing I knew from people who were Cubans or who went to Cuba early in the days were that you're going to see some incredible musicians. And to believe you not, I started crying when I entered. There was one school, I think it was Guanabacoa, because when we entered the school, there was a very little young kid. He must have been at least 7 or 8, playing the trumpet, and he was playing, maybe I think it was a Louis Armstrong repertoire or something. And it was just, it's unbelievable, because we live in America, and jazz quote, is supposed to be America's music, right? This is the music of our culture of being of American. And us living here in America, we have trouble even trying to have the school system play this music. You know, Americans themselves do not either appreciate or respect the music of America. So here we go to Cuba, who has a historical background of many different things that have happened, and we know them. We don't have to sit down and talk about it. And here you go into a school, and there's this little kid who's playing, you know, a repertoire of Louis Armstrong, and you're like, man, all this turmoil and stories and historical books that you read about fulano de tal, tarita, he did this, he did that, he did this, and then you go into a school and then you see a little kid playing the music, and it's unbelievable. And then, you know, you start moving up, then you start seeing the advanced kids. Oh my God. And that's, you know, at the time, I think kids like Pacheco was playing piano, Luis Pacheco, there was Cali Rodriguez was there. There was a lot of other great musicians. Yasek was playing trumpet. I mean, it was an unbelievable amount of musicians that could play. And when I say could play, I mean could play. And this is something that was not usual in America, right? Because the school system in America had a different way of teaching you music. You either played or you didn't play, but you still was in that same classroom taking the same classes that the other kids were taking. So for me, it was a very, very magical moment in the sense that I was able to see and capture what I wanted to see, which was the music and the musicians, you know, and it was just unbelievable. Now, in terms of the scene, I don't know what the scene was like before or after. I've always been told stories, and since I've never lived it, I can't, you know, I could only speculate. But musically, I got to tell everybody it was an unbelievable experience, and I'll cherish it to this day. It was unbelievable.
That little kid that was there, he was waiting for you.
Yeah.
You know, se veía like me.
You know what? Do you know?
Por supuesto, ¿tú crees que en cada esquina hay un kid tocando como Luis Armstrong? Es el único que encontraron y te lo pusieron. Oye, pónselo a puertorriqueño ese para que diga ya que todos los niños aquí tocan trompeta como Luis Armstrong.
But the one thing that I think that people don't, like a lot of people don't realize and don't understand is like, in every school in Cuba, in a music school in Cuba, there's like a big filter. For you to get a filter.
Un filtro.
For you to get to, at least in my generation, I don't know, Daymé, how it's in yours, but I think it's still the same. For you to advance to certain levels, you have to go through so many different tests. So by the time you get to the ENA, by the time you get to the ISA, you are good. You know, they're not going to accept somebody who's not good, who's not half. And like basically what you're experiencing when you go to music school, you're experiencing the best kids you can experience, because there's many other people that are left behind. I have to say, at least in my generation was like that.
Yeah.
When you were studying, was it like that? Was it the same, you know, same musical system in terms of everybody had the same? You had to test yourself to go up. Or was it different, Paquito, when you were doing that?
Well, first of all, my father was my first teacher. Mm-hmm. And then they opened this conservatory, and almost immediately when I was 15 years old, I was working in Teatro Musical de La Habana con Chucho was the pianist, Carlos Emilio was the guitarist, and that was the bass for Iraquere. Almost immediately they sent me 3 years to the military service.
Oh, wow.
El SMO. No, he's a musician. He's studying music. You know, what we need here is gente en el agropecuario, ingeniero, médico para mandarlo para Angola. So the music was I really never well, I finished in the Conservatorio de Marianao, but I was my parents never wanted to send me to an intern school or anything like that. And everything is changing, you know, daily. Maybe in the time of Elio Villafranca. I mean, now they don't have anymore the school of the countryside.
Yeah, like I don't No, like I remember, like for instance, if you were a trumpet player, like this was a common practice. If you were a trumpet player, they would first give you the mouthpiece. You will not have the trumpet. You're not gonna have the trumpet until that mouthpiece sounded good.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. They would say, "Here the mouthpiece," and the teacher would determine, "Okay, let me see, play it," and then you be like, "Oh no, it's still too much air. I'm not gonna give you the trumpet yet." Once the sound was round and you know, like perfect in their sense, then you earn a trumpet. So
Wow.
it's a very rigorous system that is different. Like here, you can go, anybody can just go and buy a trumpet.
Yes.
And of course, you might have a pool of people who are, some people are very talented, some people are not. Or some people have more interest than other. And then sometimes it's really hard because you hear so many different levels of things. But in Cuba, the people who are in music, when you go to music, to the school system, I can guarantee you, like most of the people, they're good, because to get to that point, you have to, you know, you have to evaluate, and they have to be approved to get to that point. I don't know if that makes sense to you, Carlos, but
No, it makes sense. No, I understand the system. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah,
that,
Why do you think it is that way? Like, why do you think they make it so rigorous, and instead of like here, anyone who wants to practice something can just kind of pick it up?
Well, I think first because they don't have the setup to take everybody.
exactly. Yeah.
First of
Right.
all, in my generation, they used to take 20 kids per year each school. So, and we had 4 schools, and I could say that a lot of kids are musical in Cuba. So just to get into the musical school is a big challenge, because a lot of kids try to get in, and then there is just 20 spots for different instruments. So it's not 20 for trumpet and 20 for piano and 20, no, it's 20 for everything. And because they need to provide the trumpet for the kid while they are studying, because we don't have stores to buy instruments in Cuba. For example, I didn't have that problem because I studied choir conducting, so my instrument is in my body, is with me. So, but for example, you actually need the instrument that you are studying, and you need a piano. My parents, they had to go crazy to find a piano for me. And you get a piano from a girl that had a piano from her mother in the 19th century. Like,
Yeah.
that's how you get a piano in Cuba. So, and it was nice to hear Carlos talking about his experience, because I was one of those kids that performed in the school for the Wynton Marsalis Orchestra. And I was playing with Kali, that is in New York, is one of my buddies. We studied in the same classroom, same school all the time, like my real buddy. And we were pretty nervous that day. Like all of us, we were shaking hands, like, these guys are coming here. And we had this great chance to actually perform for you guys, and you have no idea what it meant for us. Like, I had nightmares with that night, and I remember holding the microphone and shaking, and I couldn't control the microphone. I was like incredible, because for us it was like the guys of the Lincoln Center are coming to see us performing. Wow. And then now listen to you telling that you had this kind of same vibe. It makes me feel blessed, because it was amazing. And the other side, answering a little bit the question about what do you find in Cuba, well, I can say that you always find people that are really interested, people that want to play, people that have a lot of ideas, people that have a lot of creativity. But again, it really depends where you are going, and it really depends the opportunities that those people have and how well connected they are. Because at the end of the day, they control everything, and they control music too. they control musical business too. So you cannot perform whatever you want. And it means that you need a great guidance to actually take you to the real thing, right? Otherwise,
good last name too.
Yeah.
Hard. No, it's hard. I understand what you're saying.
I have a very interesting story about the pianist that probably you know. You work with him. His name is Emilio Soya. Emilio Soya, he went there as a tourist. And he was walking. This is an example of people see what they want to see. It was walking around, oh, what a beautiful city, Havana, and then start raining. Raining, you know, in the tropics, the Caribbean, how the rains are real rain, like in Puerto Rico or Haiti or whatever, raining. And then Soya with his wife, they run to the portal. La Habana le dicen la ciudad de las columnas, y muchas columnas y muchos portales. You know, the people, you can walk the entire city in lo que no está derrumbado. Bueno. No, look at this, this is interesting. It's raining. ¿Cómo se dice aguarecer? Entonces, Soya and his wife, they went to one of the portales because and the Cubans still walking in the rain. Very romantic, walking in the rain. And Soya told me, say, wow, mira, very nice. Cubans love walking in the rain. They don't go to the portales, you know. They enjoy getting wet. It's so nice in the tropic, you know. Cubans love walking in the rain. And in that precise moment, a big chunk of concrete, you know, shit. Maestro, you still think that Cubans love to walk in the rain? You better come with us to the rain. So far, what he wanted to see was that Cubans love walking in the rain.
Yes.
You can say that the city is already destroyed after 60 years of abuses.
Yeah.
You know? And then you want to see that? That's the way it is. Is it true?
That's the way it is.
I may say that in other words, in different words.
Yeah.
See what they want to see. And that happens not only there. Whenever you go, it's the same thing. People want to see what they want to see.
Yeah. One more thing actually, that it's not only about the instruments that the school are lacking or anything. It's also beds. Because for instance, I'm from Pinar del Rio.
Oh my God.
The only school once I went to Havana, the only school that I could go to was the ENA, because the ENA was a school assigned for people who coming from different provinces. Everybody from from all the provinces, from Camagüey, Santiago, Pinar del Rio, anything that was not from Havana, they would go to the ENA. They cannot go to Amadeo Rodan, or those schools are from the people in Havana. So those schools has a very amount of beds. That's it. There's like a school, like is 3 people graduated or 4 people graduated. There's only 4 beds available. That's it. And then there's like this. That's it. There's 4 people who can go to those schools. So the limitations are many in terms of like why is that makes the going to school very, very, very competitive. Very, very.
The other thing, Elio, is that they don't allow you to have your own school.
Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because the state have this amount of beds in the school. Well, I have my mother and my cousin in New York. They're going to send me the money and the pianos and the trumpet and the clarinets and everything. And I am going to have my own school. No.
No.
Yes.
But why not? No. They have, like Daymé said, like Daymé Arocena said, because they want to control everything.
Yes.
And they did it. They do it. They want not. They control everything.
They do it. I just want to say something else. Elio, you know what? I'm from Havana, but I had to live 2 years in Pinar del Rio teaching there.
Wow.
Yeah, my social service, I had to do it in Pinar because
Yeah.
you know that when I graduated from choir conducting, right, we were 8 in the whole country. So we were all sent to different cities because they needed professors and nobody wants to go to the countryside. So that's the way they feed those spots, right? And I had to go to Pinar del Rio
Wow.
to teach the kids there. It was such a bad experience for me, but I'm really happy that my students, they made it, they got it. Now they are musicians, graduated. But believe me, when you said Pinar del Rio, I got it in my heart, like, ah!
You know what's amazing about all this, you know, and this is it's unbelievable, you know, just hearing Paquito's voice about, you know, Cuba, hearing Elio and Daymé. This is unbelievable with all these obstacles, right? That not me, but that you cats dealt with and others. You know, it's unbelievable because we could. I mean, I know we could spend days here, talking and reflecting on all the crazy negative and stuff that now, since we're here in America, we could see certain things that are not, you know, that you could say, wow, why wasn't it like this? But musically, even till this day, you know, the value of what Afro-Cuban music is for American music, American jazz is unbelievable. Even though it went through all this crazy stuff, like all these stories that you're saying, and most people, like I know with Paquito, I know with my first experience when I went to Cuba, I remember having a dialogue with Paquito and even seeing him. I think we saw you in Mexico after we went. And we spoke, and it was unbelievable because everybody in the band, the first thing they did was like, let's talk to Paquito because everybody wanted to interchange their stories because, like Paquito said, you want to see what you want to see. And of course, you know, the history is what it is. And if you never lived it, you can't speak anything about it, unfortunately. And even the books that you read might give you the wrong interpretations. But even that, let's remove that. The music. Let's talk about the music and how valuable this music has been to us. And you know, there was a time, you know, of course, the exile, the time when the embargo, where nothing from Cuba could have come to America, right? There was a period where you couldn't even hear what a song of Cuba was. We were relying, the New York, los Puerto Ricos in New York were relying on 78s, 45s, listening to like the oldest of oldest to try to maintain the music. You know, I was talking to Eddie Palmieri about it, and he was talking about, no, que el bajista de Arsenio, Lázaro, y fulano de tal, conjunto modelo, and we were trying to play this in New York, and it even got to a point that a lot of people don't understand that a lot of the successful Puerto Rican musicians of New York during a certain era were making it famous playing music and arrangements or compositions of Cubans, you know, during that time in America. And there were, you know, for whatever reason, if we could, you might say, man, that's messed up or whatever, that, you know, it was trying to be kept alive. You know, it was the Latin jazz or salsa, you know, which, you know, that's the marketable word, you know, which basically for those on Facebook that don't know what that means, is basically Afro-Cuban music and all its rhythms. You know, salsa is basically that, you know, name that they gave it. But, you know, it's just unbelievable to sit here and talk about this and just sit back and say, wow, you know, we have years of music that we've, you know, we've exploited. People have exploited, but at the same time have given it its respect. And now you have all these young, Nicole, we have all these young musicians out there. Michael Rodriguez, Robert Rodriguez. You have Daphnis, Josvani, Pedrito Martinez. I'm going to go down the line. There's Miguel Zenon, David Sanchez, you know, and I'm going to miss a bunch of them. Alain Perez, who's trying to bring like a very, you know, modern way of a timba in Cuba to the States and to the world. You know, it's unbelievable how much turmoil in countries bring out positive things. And music is unbelievable. Music, to me, I don't think music has any type of, and I'm going to say this, and I might get a backlash on it. I don't think music has any political attachment to it, and I hope that it doesn't. You know, and every time I see things, I try to always keep it in a certain way, you know, of very neutral, you know. And I know it's hard because my generation, I never got to see anything of what Elio and Paquito and Daymé speaks about, because when I was born, you know, it was a different system. I was born in the Bronx, 79. You know, I grew up in the 80s. You know, I didn't know much. The only thing I knew was mofongo, rice and beans, and then all the music that was being played. You know? So it's interesting, you know, and this is an unbelievable panel to talk about this, because, you know, it basically breaks the barriers and the walls, you know, talking to Paquito, to Elio, and you could understand the generational gaps and what they had to go through, because believe it or not, people idolize and the inspirations of Paquito. If it wasn't for him, many musicians, Puerto Ricanos, Dominicanos, South Americans, you name them, wouldn't be where they're at if Paquito did not deal with the turmoils that he dealt with. You know, and some people may agree with what he says, some people may fight him. It's gonna be that's the beauty of democracy. You're gonna get somebody who's gonna say, all right, blah blah blah, I don't agree, or I agree. But if it wasn't for that, I don't think I would know, you know, 50% or 60% of my knowledge of Latin music, because he didn't do what he did. Same thing with Elio, same thing with Daymé. So this is unbelievable. And the fact that we're talking about this, you know, 2 thumbs up.
I think also, Carlos, what you're speaking about, actually, that's not a foreign thing. It's also happened here in America. I mean, I've read one book that I read, which is very interesting. You read this book, Three Witches, by
Three Witches? No, I
yeah, it's like the book by the Panonica, you know, the woman who kind of like hosted monk for many years, and she, you know, in her gathering, she did this thing where she started asking like everybody, like Monk and Miles and Duke and everybody who was going to her house, she would ask, so if God were to ask you, you know, for 3 wishes, what would those 3 wishes be? And then people would, like, that wasn't a party, people would say different things. Oh, I would probably want more money, or want understand music at a different level, and all these things. But the interesting thing about the book, when I read it, was like, it gave me a little bit of insight of how much suffering there was in the jazz community at the time. And I think it's a different type of suffering. And this is the same people that I idolize, the same people that I listen to, that are my heroes. And yet, but you know,
you're right,
they were able to reflect on the hardship that was like being a musician during those times. It's the same thing that I'm speaking to, like in my generation. Even though I appreciate where I am, and I music became my savior, right? Like the way to kind of like endure whatever hardship would have been in life at the time or whatever. But it's interesting also for me to reflect back and say, like, because sometimes when, you know, like, so about your question, like if you go to Cuba, what are the things that you want people to know that they don't know? Because I have a lot of people going to Cuba and then basically not seeing the bigger picture of it. It's just only a narrow thing.
Right.
And I think what makes us special is exactly what you Carlos are saying. Like we endure a lot of stuff and we go through a lot of things, but then we stick to music and we make the music to be our savior. And then that's when you see the music being very special and everything. And the music became apolitical in a way, because we kind of like, you know, strive to it. But we can filter one or the other, because if you take that element, I think, I'm not saying you, like, if people take that element, that the thing that we went through, then we probably wouldn't be here right now. So it's a kind of like a most needed maybe struggle, if you will, to maybe like to understand something us as a human being, as a musician.
I think about like all of the challenges that it took for all of you to be here, and that goes through different generations. And I also think about when Duke Ellington said jazz is freedom. How do you think that sentiment applies to jazz in Cuba, or the music scene in Cuba, and how has that evolved?
Paquito, you go
first. That's an oxymoron. You're talking about the last 60 years in Cuba and freedom. It's an oxymoron. It's like a Nazi you or something like that. or a black person member of the Ku Klux Klan. That doesn't make any sense at all. Because I come from talking about generations. You know, in my generation, jazz was a 4-letter word. There was not any law forbidding to play jazz. But for us, why do you think Irakere was born? That's a story that you don't know about Irakere. I remember when Chucho and Oscar Valdez, they called me in a park, in the park in Havana, across the street from the Amadero Dan Theater. And Chucho, not Chucho, Oscar, who is the brain of that group, tell me, Paquito, we want you to be part of this group with us. The name of the group is Irakere. And leave out the word jazz. Don't talk about that here. I said, well, what do you mean? Then I have been playing jazz all my life. What do you want me to play? And they say, you play whatever you want, martial music, jazz, but don't say it. Very simple. Jazz is imperialist music for these people, for the people, la gente que manda. So, no jazz. We have been accused, this is going to sound very funny to you. We have been accused of playing jazz music behind all the bata drums and all that African stuff. And Chucho denied. Chucho denied. He was indignant. How come that you call it that way? We are playing Afro-Cuban revolutionary music or whatever. Mira cómo sabía Daymé. Hacía como, bueno, menciona eso. Toca con bebop y eso, but don't mention the word jazz. Jazz is literally a 4-letter word. And that is, for me, was a surprise when they bring the Wynton Marsalis Orchestra to Cuba, and they had the jazz festival. I remember how como maltrataron a Bobby Calcacé when he organized that first jazz festival in Cuba. They treat him like dirt. Yeah. Because he wanted to have a jazz festival there. That is what we suffer. Wow. That is what eso fue lo que nosotros vivimos, la gente de mi generación. Everything changed later. You know why?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Money.
Yeah. That's the key of everything.
Jazz brings dollars. Oh. Claro. Antes eran traidores, no son traidores.
Man, that's
I'm just, you know what? I have a notebook here and I'm just writing down these phrases because I want tattoos with those phrases in my body, you know, incredible. I love them. Wow. I know. And they still don't pay you. You know that jazz festival in Cuba, you don't get paid 1 penny. Wow. No, you don't get paid.
¿Y tú sabes cuánto le pagan a cada médico eso que tienen por ahí de esclavo? $3,000 mensuales. Y ellos reciben 300. But that's a different conversation. You know?
I know, but talking about freedom.
We can talk about music and better. Still, we have the music. It's our salvation. Like Elio said.
Well, that's the key. You're right.
Esa es la verdad. No le pagan mucho centavo. La gente va de todas formas.
Paquito, I got a question for you. Did you ever decide when you were young, when that happened, to not play jazz, to say, you know what, I'm not going to play bebop?
No.
Wow.
I love that music. I love the music. And I never had the chance to say this to Carlito. Carlito is one of my favorite bass players. Why? Because always I say that you don't have to be Austrian to play Mozart. Carlito played perfectly Latin music and American music. You can play all that, and the style of music that you can put all that together is a 4-letter word, jazz.
Yeah.
You know? No.
So thinking about jazz and freedom, I found freedom through jazz, because I used to be really uncomfortable with myself. I used to be really I don't like to say that I suffer bully or things like that, because that's not way to see life. But I wasn't comfortable with my body, with my face, with my heritage. But music always saved me. I knew that every single time I had the chance to sing, people will respect me. So, and then I had that when I was a kid, but when I got into Amadeo Roldán, there was the moment that you actually had to prove that you cannot just sing. You can actually have to be a good musician. And jazz gave me that kind of background. Like, it was my spot to actually say, okay, if I get to learn how to scat, if I can do some scat, if I can sing this kind of music, people will respect me, people will like me, and I'm going to fit in the social circle. So not just talking about all the creativity that I have through jazz, and just even talking about my own personal story. Jazz is actually giving me confidence to express myself. And I don't know how to say this in English, but I am tartamuda. How do you say that in?
Stutter.
Como Biden.
Stutter?
Yeah, yeah. So I remember, in Spanish I do it more than in English. And when I started doing scat and all of that, people actually used to tell me, "That's great. You can use that when you scat." And I add a lot of those things, I mean, like compliments to my way to do and improvise in jazz, because at the end of the day, I didn't have books to teach me how to scat. When I listen to young jazz singers, I can hear that most of these young jazz singers have like a formula that it works, and you get the vibe and you get all of that is I don't know, from a book or from somewhere or from a school formation. But in my case, any weird thing that I do when I sing that I call a scat is actually crazy creations of mine, because I just wanted to express myself through that. And I knew that people wouldn't make fun of me if I was just the jazz singer of the school. So actually, jazz is the channel of being confident with myself, feeling free, feeling stable, being established. Like, jazz is giving me all I need to develop ideas, to develop my creativity, and to be myself.
Paquito.
What's wrong with your face, man? You have the beautiful eyes.
Oh.
Es lindísima esa chica.
I think.
Es verdad.
I know, but you know that people are weird in Cuba, and people tells you, like, if you are too dark, you are not beautiful. If you are fat, you are not beautiful. If you are too short, you are not beautiful. And you grow up with those things in your mind. Then you realize they are all wrong. But believe me, I have to say thanks, jazz, because jazz gave me that. And then I got to realize when people was interested if, you know, like hanging with me or things like that, was a little bit because I was kind of popular in the school because I was singing jazz. So believe me, jazz is like my husband too, kind of.
Jazz, por favor.
You know, coming from Pinar del Rio, you know, of course, there's no jazz in Pinar del Rio. There's nothing in Pinar del Rio. So
What do we?
Yeah, when I went to Havana, the first time I heard the word jazz, you know, and then I saw Richie Cole perform, and that's how I got into this music, like to seeing Richie Cole performing the blues. Actually, he was performing the blues. He was singing, waving the microphone. It was crazy at the Festival Internacional in Plaza. So then I decided to become a jazz musician. It's like, I want to do this music, you know, because I was doing classical music, but I felt like classical music was too rigid, right? And I wanted that freedom of expression and everything. So I asked, so where is this jazz thing happening? And then they told me there is a club called the Maxine that it was led by Bobby Carcassés. Yeah, and then I went to the club. I saw the scene was crazy, smoke and very tiny little place. There was a lot of people there. You know, and they were playing, you know, Bobby was playing jazz and doing a bunch of stuff, right? And then Then I heard for the first time this song on Green Dolphin Street. And I was like, oh man, I love that piece. So I want to play that song. But in Cuba, there's no real book. There's nothing. There's just basically, you went to school. It's like anybody asking people, do you know this song on Green Dolphin Street? And it's like, no. It's like, and then I had to go to Hernan Lopez Nusa home or people like professional musicians to see if they have a copy of a chart or a recording where I can transcribe. I found a recording. I transcribed the song. And then I studied it. And then I went to the club one day with the song prepared, and I asked Dulcider, it was the pianist who was playing with Bobby at the time. And I asked him, like, do you think can I play this song with you guys? And then it's like, well, yeah, maybe come next week, whatever. Okay, the following week I go, and then I talked to the bass player, and the bass player says like, okay, yeah, when Bobby comes, I let him know that you're a pianist and you're gonna play on Green Dolphin Street, and that's fine. Okay, I was waiting. Bobby comes in, very nervous, and then the bass asked him, what's going on? It's like, well, I don't know, we don't have a pianist today. And then he said, this is the pianist over here, he can play the gig tonight. And he was like, okay, you're a pianist. And I said, yeah, thinking on Green Dolphin Street. That was the only song I knew.
And then keys,
I got in the piano, and then Bobby says like, okay, let's play my blues. And I was like, your blues? I look at the bass player and it's like, no, I only want to play on Green Dolphin Street. I was like, no, come on, I tell you the changes. Don't worry. I spent the whole night playing that gig. The bass player shooting the changes at me, and I never ever played on Green Dolphin Street.
You never played?
I never played it because I never called it. That was my initiation into the jazz world. Like, I was basically just making it. Yeah.
Very good. It reminds me of the in the Marine school, in la Escuela de la Marina. I was told that the first day, they woke up you in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, before breakfast, they bring you to a, ¿cómo se dice? Un muelle? A dock. They do all on underwear. Everybody in underwear, and we are talking about January or something like that. Underwear, and the dock and the sea is there. And the captain, the sergeant start pushing everybody to the water without asking you if you know how to swim. The same thing with the Green Dolphin Street of yours.
Exactly.
That's the only way to learn how to play.
Mm-hmm.
Tú vas para allá y tienes que tocar. I don't know the blues. Well, too late. But this fun. Now you know the Dolphin Street and many others, and the blues too, right?
Exactly.
I know that.
Well, I want to say we're actually out of time, and it makes me sad because I've had such a good time being here with everyone. And I want to say thank you again to the panelists for being here and for contributing your insight. And it's been really wonderful. And thank you again for being a part of this really important conversation. I'm going to hand it back to Chloe to close this out, but thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Been a pleasure to be here.
That was Play us out, Paquito.
Next time we'll play that together.
All right, guys. I'll let Paquito play us out, but I want to say thank you so much to everybody on Facebook for tuning in to tonight's panel. Once again, if you enjoyed tonight's programming, if it's within your means, if you're feeling generous, please consider making a donation to us at Jazz at Lincoln Center. We are a nonprofit organization, and we're committed to entertaining, enriching, and expanding a global community for jazz. Contributions of any amount are extremely meaningful to our supporters and donors, everyone that's here tonight. We can't thank you enough. Please remember, if you had fun tonight, check us out, Jazz at Lincoln Center on Facebook, jazz.org on Instagram and Twitter. Thank you so much again, and have a wonderful night. Paquito, you're gonna play us out? Hey, everyone.
Peanuts.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
All right, man. We love you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amen. We'll be in touch with you.
All right, we're out. We're
Yes.
good.
Yeah, let's talk. Let's talk.
Ache. Let's talk.
Ache pa ti, Platona.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.